There has been a lot of buzz about what to invest in recent years. But have you ever wondered whether the creator economy can be the next frontier for investments? Our next speaker, a partner at Golden Gate Ventures and an active supporter of up-and-coming local artists, is here to share about that possibility. Please join me in welcoming Michael Lints.
Hey guys. You guys look tired. You guys all right? Sure? Okay, otherwise I'll go home. Cool. It feels a bit weird for me to talk about the creator economy since I'm 47. So I talked to my daughter last night and she made this presentation for me. So bear with me, guys. I'm going to try and talk about how investors look at the creator economy, where we invest in, how we invest, why we invest. A little bit about myself. I've been in Singapore for the past 10 years. I'm a partner at Golden Gate Ventures. We're a venture capital fund based out of Singapore. We have offices in Jakarta and Vietnam as well. We basically invest in early stage startups. And some of them you might have used. If you order groceries online, you might have used Redmart. Or if you want to sell your sneakers, these Off-Whites, for example, you'll use Carousel. So those are companies that we have invested in the past. I also have a tremendous passion for fashion designers, specifically young designers, music and arts. And to give an example, we co-sponsored an NFT exhibition by Siobhan Wong, which is happening now. Quick plug. And when it comes to creativeness and the creative industry, I'm also a co-producer and director of a documentary, an award-winning documentary called Broken Chains, which talks about diversity and equality. Besides investing and spending money on companies and helping them grow, I try to really get a sense of what is this creator economy? And how can you invest and eventually return money from it? Because it's not easy. Oh, and lastly, I also sit on the board of a company called Money Smart, based out of Singapore. So if you look at the creative industry and the creator industry, you almost want to think of investing as an art and less as a science. Because a lot of times you're investing in people, especially at the very, very early stage. It's different than, you look at a company which is like 15 years old and they have assets and offices and it's very, very easy, versus investing in someone who might work from home, from the attic, or with a couple of friends. And how are you able to invest in this person and generate a return? I can tell you it's not easy. So part of it is art, but also there's a part which is, to me, which is science. But let's talk about the art first. So if you look at art from an investment standpoint, when I speak to founders, there's a few things that I want to understand. Let's see if I can get the next slide on. It's going to go one back. Here we go. The first thing we do as a firm is we spend a lot of time with the creators and with the founders. And it doesn't really matter what you do, whether it's long form, short form, whether it's arts, whether it's NFTs, whether it's Web3. We really want to get an understanding of the vision of the founder. Because we can all build stuff. That's not so hard. Every single person in this room can build stuff. But can you eventually build something that people will actually use? Can you eventually build something that people are willing to pay for and come back every single time? Now that's the art. So when we speak to founders, when we speak to creators, when we speak to these young designers, young developers, these young influencers, we want to get an understanding of where they see themselves in the next 5, 6, 7, sometimes even 10 years. And I'll give an example. So we've invested in a company based out of Singapore. This is almost 11 years ago. And the company was super young. Was 3 young guys, and they wanted to do something to help the gaming industry. And we were infatuated by their vision. And the company was super small. Again, this is 11 years ago. Today, the company is worth over $2 billion. So what happened to these founders? What happened to these young kids? They had an extremely strong vision on what they wanted to build for the gaming industry. And they understood really well that what they were building was something fairly unique. They do mini payments that you can do in-app. So without kind of leaving the platform, you can do in-app payments if you want to buy skins or weapons or whatever in the game. This wasn't a big thing 11 years ago. It became a big thing over time. It became even bigger during the pandemic, and it's still big until this date. So when we have those conversations early on, we really want to understand over the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years, is this still going to be an investable company? Are you as a creator still going to be an investable person? Are you going to be a one-person shop for the next 5 years? Or are you going to actually build a larger company around yourself? So those are all the things that we look for in founders' conversations. But how do we do this? Well, luckily, because I feel like a grandpa, I have a bit of experience in speaking to people and getting an understanding whether their vision is actually a vision and if they can execute on their vision as well. Which effectively means is if you are telling me that, as an example, you want to build a community platform for influencers. Do you have an understanding what it means to build a community? Do you have an understanding what it means to build a platform which is sticky? Do you understand pricing? We've spoken with companies like very early on that said, hey, I'm going to build something new for the creative industry, and for them to onboard, it's going to cost them $500 a month. I said, forget about it, because you're going to get 0 customers from day one. Like, your approach into your community, your customer base, is extremely important to us. So that for us is really kind of an understanding, and it's been a lot of experience. And then the other thing is around you as a person. What kind of person are you? Are you able to, day in, day out, for instance, when it comes to content, create content? I've spoken with content creators just all over the globe, and I've seen how hard they work every single day, thinking of different concepts, creativeness, thinking of new ideas, testing new ideas, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, not being afraid of failure. So all of these things go into when we look at specifically content creators and entrepreneurs when we invest. There's a bit of science to it as well. So we try to look at where the market is and whether it makes sense for people to build businesses. So to give an example, when we spoke with the ByteDance team a while ago, we learned, for instance, that they were very interested in commerce, which makes a lot of sense. A lot of these amazing creators on the platform are a magnet for big brands to associate themselves with. But how do you then drive commerce over a platform? So for us, it then makes a lot of sense to look for companies that are building commerce for content creators, that make it very easily to purchase small ticket items, whether it is in the metaverse, whether it is physical items. And then we sometimes forget another angle or another sector, which is D2C. We're seeing more and more that a lot of these larger artists that have been around for 20, 25 years are going into building their own brands. Now, what we like a lot is that we're seeing these young creators building their own brands as well. And they're getting an opportunity because you're seeing large fashion houses, for example, or design houses or galleries working with young creators. So to give an example, I'm not sure if you guys know this brand. It's called Namesake. I'm not an investor, unfortunately. But it's a brand that is inspired by basketball. So they make high-end fashion, but they inspire themselves by basketball, by the NBA. The company is built by, I think it's a dad and 2 sons. If I go to New York, hardly anyone knows this brand. And I know for a fact because I tried in 2021 to understand if people know this brand, and everyone said never heard of it. Who's heard of Namesake in this room? Case in point. Funny enough, the dad and the 2 brothers were picked up by LVMH. And they did a show in Paris. I will guarantee you that by next year, if I come back, if you guys invite me back, and I'm going to ask the same question, half the room will raise their hand. So what I'm saying is, with this creative industry, a brand can come from nowhere and become a global brand before you know it. If you look at Pharrell, for example, who now has a massive job within the fashion industry, if you look at his history, he's always built brands, whether it is NERD, whether it's a $1 Billion Boys Club. He's always built brands from scratch. What do all these people have in common? To my earlier point, they were all visionaries. And they all had this idea, I'm willing to build this company for the next 10 to 15 years. So those are creators that we like to work with, and those are creators that we like to invest in. Now, it's not all about the vision and creativeness. We really believe that the creative industry is a large, rising industry, but it's still fairly young. If you look at other industries such as fintech, healthcare, or logistics, or agriculture, those are like old industries that people understand. The creative industry is still very hard to understand for a lot of investors. And the main reason is that only a few people are able to actually make money out of this industry. Only a small number of influencers are actually have enough followers to generate revenue. But what is interesting to us, I'm just going to look at this slide, is we'll keep on looking for unicorns. And unicorns can be influencers themselves, but unicorns can also become platforms that serve the creative industry. But this also kind of scares me, because there is this big enthusiastic group, I think over 207 million people globally, that are in this space in one shape or the other. But only a very small percentage is able to generate a form of revenue that is meaningful. But when I invest in someone, and when I invest into a company, we want to get, a 10x return on our money, sometimes even a 100x return on our money. So that becomes very difficult when you look at this industry specifically. So we have to look very good and very hard to find the right creators, the right entrepreneurs. What is positive, though, is that you can make a choice. You can choose or you can combine investing in both talents and in platforms. So as an example, in a personal capacity, I'm always looking for young designers that have a vision, that are willing to build, that believe in their own brand, that believe in their craft, and invest in them over the longer term. And as a company, we invest in platforms that support the creative industry. I took a slide from my good friends at Antler, and this really kind of showcases what the landscape looks like when it comes to the creative industry. So I told you guys that it's a very new industry from a venture capital, from an investment perspective. But what makes it interesting is that you have so many different options when it comes to investment. So to give an example, we've recently, in the last, this was in the last year, thereabouts, we've invested in 2 companies that are in the low-code, no-code space. Because one of the trends that we're seeing is that some of the influencers want to build their own platform. so they're able to monetize and talk to their community. But you don't want to spend a year or 2 years engineering and building this platform. So low-code, no-code companies actually help you create something really fast. We've seen this in the website space, and we're now seeing it more in things like the metaverse as well. I'm still a huge fan of D2C brands. D2C is very difficult, and it's time-consuming and it's costly. But once you get it right, once you're able to build this global brand, sky's the limit. One of the other things we've seen specifically in Southeast Asia is influencer management. We've looked at a few companies within this space. I still feel that it's fairly nascent, mainly because for an influencer management platform, you need a lot of influencers that actually generate revenue for your platform and are willing to pay on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis. And because the industry is still so new, the acquisition of these influencers is very difficult. And it's hard to get loyalty from them as well. And the one interesting part, I'm just going to go back a few slides to show you something. So in 2020, European brands spent about 1.3 billion on influencers to get them associated to their brand. So from the outset, it looks like a lot of money. But from a venture standpoint, that means it's still fairly early. We want this number to be 10x. We want this to be at least 10, 13 billion spent on influencers in terms of marketing. Then it becomes a sizable economy for us to invest in. What I hope you guys can take away from this is that the industry itself is extremely interesting. And I'm very hyped up by the talent that we're seeing, the possibilities that we're seeing, the investments that we're making, and whether it is in the NFT space, whether it is within the metaverse, whether it is up and coming new brands, even whether it is backing influencers themselves to help grow their platform and eventually become global phenomenons. But you also realize that it's still fairly early days, and we think like in the next 4 to 5 years, this will mature really fast. And why? Because for brands, it's an amazing way to really work and connect to their community. And their community is getting more diverse, their community is getting more younger, their community is getting more global, and this allows them to really connect to them. I want to thank you guys for the time. My name is Michael. I'll hang around for a little bit, and I think Jay will have some questions for me as well, but thanks for your attention, guys.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing with us today. I've just got one question for you. How can creators and investors work together to ensure the long-term sustainability in the creator economy?
Yeah, it's a very good question. What I think is interesting for the creator economy and investors is to really think about, can we incubate something together? I think investors are more and more interested through either venture studios or really early kind of seed investments to help the creator economy build things together. So you can use the experience of investors, you can use the network of investors to build something from scratch, and then you have a partner for the longer term. And I think for investors, the creator economy gives so much insights in trends and new things to invest in. So I think that's an easy way for those two parties to work together.
So basically, it's going to be a collaborative effort.
Always is.
Thank you so much, Michael. Michael, Lints, everyone.
Thank you, guys.